So excited to be here.
Yeah, we're gonna start here in a minute.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, we have buffer service back here.
Okay.
Yeah, help yourself to whatever.
Nancy. Okay.
Last week, they were-
I don't know. I wasn't.
There was a lot of about 26.
Yeah, there's usually a lot of mine. Yeah, well, so we have two people together,
We take
coming in on Zoom, but that's different than. because we actually do.
Yeah, oh,
Those are different numbers too.
Yeah.
because other people
I got
can
15
watch the
somebody-
live stream and not watching on Zoom, right? So, yeah.
I
You
got
have a
sick.
minute, Aileen.
Thank you.
And
And
then
we're gonna get started in a minute.
next.
Oh, so what do I do? I'll do the mouse
You
thing.
could do the mouse thing, so yeah, so when you're ready to share, you're gonna click,
Oh, yeah.
well, I can help you.
Well, you'll be here.
But yeah, so we'll click the share button, once we're ready for that part, we'll click share, and then you can guide in moving the screens, and I'll point to where you need the mouse to be in order to do that. You gotcha,
Okay.
okay.
Now, I just have my beaten up index cards that are really beaten up because they're still quality.
Okay, we can probably start.
Back, Oh, the one book will last, so they said, cut out all those, and that was.
Okay, okay, I think we're gonna begin.
Hello, everyone. Shalom. Eileen, how are you?
Good, thank
Good afternoon, everyone. I speak up that way, look that way.
you. Yep, look that way, you can
Okay.
look here, talk ahead.
Everyone, well, I say welcome to everyone, shalom, and I want to get it started as quickly as possible, only because I have to leave here today about 10:02, because unfortunately, say a prayer for me, I need root canal work. And the only time we could fit the only opening in the endodontist up in Boynton Beach, is where we live, is at 1:30, so I have to watch the time. So say a prayer for me, if you will. So anyway, let me begin by introducing myself. I am Rabbi Steve Moss. My wife Judy and I are members of Temple Bethel. We do live in Boynton Beach, and simply a biography, I'll just let you know, is that in 2019, I retired from our synagogue on Long Island in Suffolk County, where I was the rabbi for 47 years. Started in 1972, and then 2019, and I'm emeritus there. But also this past October, I came out of retirement, so to speak, and I'm now the rabbi at Temple Sinai of Palm Beach County in Delray on Atlantic Avenue. And by the way, we have services every Friday night at 7:30. Anyway, that's where I am now as the rabbi. This has been termed, and I do want to thank Rabbi Jessica for doing such a great, good presentation last week and the text that she chose to start this boot camp. Where did I get this idea? What is this whole thing about boot camp? I'm looking around. I don't think any of you were in the Marines. Is that correct? I mean, it might have been. I don't know, but it could have been. But looking around, I'm not sure. I don't think so, no. But anyways, you have the idea that there is a boot camp for those in the armed services. And why? Because you just can't leave your regular life situation and all of a sudden start doing all the things that are necessary in the armed services, no less than the Marines. And so a lot of it is physical building up. And no, we're not doing calisthenics, although maybe we should at this time of the day. However, we're not doing physical preparation, although in a sense we will be, because I hope to do some meditations with you as well. So that's physical and spiritual and mental. But also the fact is that we are doing a spiritual boot camp. And again, Rabbi Jessica laid this all out in a very lovely way last week. So I always like to begin my programs, especially when we're doing texts, which we will be doing, with a special bracha for study. So I'm going to say, welcome to join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Amen. So, Eileen, there you go. Bring up the first slide. I do apologize for anything that happens with this PowerPoint presentation, as I did this on my own, no professional help whatsoever. And so we'll say a prayer for that as well. Anyway, Actually, this is the best looking one of them all in terms of anything very spectacular. Yeah, nice so far. Anyway, I just want to give you a sense of where the class is going to go. And so, let's see what I do. That arrow channel. Oh, yeah. Okay. We are the people of the book. However, in truth, I would like to say that we are the people of the books. There are many, many books of this library, as I'm sure you all realize. I'm going to read from up there. God revealed itself through the holy texts of our tradition, those from the oral tradition, meaning Torah, and the others from the written tradition. These texts and the voluminous commentaries are the foundation of our Jewish lives. As they were thousands of years ago, so too are they today. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take you, all of us together, and those streaming in, welcome to everybody. I'm going to take us through the texts of our tradition as they speak about Rosh HaShanah and obviously Yom Kippur. I'm hoping this is going to take into next week. I certainly won't finish all of the text that I have on this presentation, this PowerPoint today in part one. And then what I'm hoping to do is then to take you through the books, the prayer books that we are going to be using for the high holy days. Because after all, if you say, well, I'll be there Rosh Hashanah, I'll be there Yom Kippur afternoon, I'll help you go to Slichot, and I'll figure it out. Well, if you can't figure it out once you get there, you have to what? Have a boot camp. You have to prepare beforehand. So all the prayers, all the songs, all the rituals and ceremonies will have a greater and deeper meaning to you. Life calls for preparation. In Hebrew, a word that really means this and indicates this is the Hebrew word kavanah. And I don't know, does anyone, you look like some golfers here. Does anyone play golf? No. Does anyone do anything here? Okay, golf, okay. Well, you might, even though you might not play golf, as you might be aware, there's a thing called addressing the ball. You just don't go up to the ball and just whack it. I mean, you might do well, but the odds are you're going to miss it or God knows where the ball's going to go, right? And so it's called addressing the ball. You prepare yourself in order to hit the ball. I have seen people stand over that ball for an immense period of time. Actually, one of my friends, he said, get going already. I mean, you've got to watch the time here. The same way as I was amazed, I still go to the gym, but I used to go to Gold's Gym on Long Island, where I was born in Brooklyn, by the way, and grew up in Rockaway in Bell Harbor, in Queens. I went to the gym and there was this big guy, okay, and he was standing over this barbell that had a lot of weights. I mean, I would have gone over, I'm sure, no way. Anyway, I watched him stand over it for close to 5 minutes staring at it. And I was like, what is this guy doing? And then he went down and he lifted it. He was preparing himself because the human body, I'm assuming certainly the weights were more than he weighed. In order to do something like that, you just don't go up and just lift because you're going to really hurt yourself severely. He prepared himself mentally and spiritually. That's what we're doing. And we're doing this through our text. And by the way, in terms of our text this coming Shabbat, the Torah portion, the Parsha is Re'eh. Behold, I give to you, Adonai is saying, I give to you the blessing and the curse. I give to you life and death. Choose what? Choose life that you might live. We have choices in life. You had a choice to come here today, for those of you who are zooming in. You had a choice to zoom in, to stream in, for whatever. Or you had a choice to go and have a nice lunch and just relax at home. We are making choices every single moment of our lives. But in order for those choices to be most effective and not be hurtful to ourselves, like the examples I gave from athletics, but also even spiritually, we want to live a life in which we are truly chayim. This morning I was studying with a partner of mine, the Zohar, the Jewish mystical tradition, the text, and it said something which really was quite impressive. And that is, when we fail to live the life that we should live, we are not living, but actually we're dying. And we use the word specifically, mateen. When we are living life, we are chayim. When we fail to live a proper life, we are living like the dead. I like to term it in a little bit less abrasive word and say, guess what? Most of us live in la la land all the time. We're la la. We're just go about life doing stuff, whatever. It turns out okay. It turns out okay. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But guess what? Everything we do affects everything that there is and everyone. The ripple effect. So I'm going to take you through the different texts. Okay. So can you see this? Can I see this? That's a good question. Okay. I'm going to obviously work here in the following order: Torah, Mishnah, Talmud, Shulchan Aruch, and I'll explain what these texts are for those who are not familiar with all of them, and then also the Zohar to begin. And some of this you might find to be quite fascinating, because what's amazing, what I love about being, like a lot, I mean, I like to filter fish and multiple, so there's a lot of things I like about being Jewish, to say the least. Some of it does have to do with food. But the fact is the things that we do today, even as Reformed Jews who find their beginnings thousands of years ago. There's that, Lador Vador, right? That transmission from generation to generation. And I think that's great. Okay. So what I did is that I went into the Torah, and thank God bless Google, okay? And whoever invented Google, God bless that person, Mr. Google, and Mrs. Google, of course, Mrs. Google. And anyway, is that I Googled Rosh HaShanah and Yom Kippur. First of all, and by the way, for those of you here in the room, if you have a question as I'm going on here, please stop me if I say something, especially you say, what is he saying? Okay, please, hi. Hello.
And also for those in the Zoom room who might want to submit a question, you can also put that into the chat.
Yeah. So, first of all, guess what? The wording Rosh Hashanah, which we're very familiar with, you will not find it anywhere in the Torah or the Bible. Amazing, right? Yeah. So, what do we find? Look at number one. This is from Leviticus, of course, the Exodus. Right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, the third book of the Torah, chapter 23, the festival of trumpets. Verse 23, the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly commemorating with trumpet blasts, of course, shofar. Do no regular work, but present a food offering to the Lord. That's it. Okay. Challah had not been invented yet, okay? There's none of these things have been invented yet. And so that's all it is. And notice again, critically, it does not mention Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the 7th month of the year. This is going to come up a little bit later on as well. But guess what? The new year does not actually begin with Rosh Hashanah, does it? What is the first month of the actual most ancient Hebrew calendar? Nisan, right, in the springtime. Yeah. If I were to bring up parts of the Torah about that, the first month of the most ancient Hebrew calendar of the year is in the springtime. And why? Because our ancestors were farmers, agriculturalists. And therefore, when does a new year begin to a farmer, to a person who plants, to a person who has sheep and different whatever kinds of animals, okay, when things are being born, the world begins in springtime. So Nisan is the first month of the Jewish calendar year. So now you're saying to yourself, okay, Rabbi, that's really great, but then why in the world would the first day of the 7th month, be critical at all? What is that all about? Well, actually, this indicates something very interesting. In the year 572 BCE, before the Common Era, the Babylonians came and destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem built by King Solomon, and they took many of the Jews at that time away into captivity, basically refugees, to Babylonia. And they remained there for about 50 years until the Babylonian Empire was taken over by the Persians, and King Cyrus said, if you want to go back, you can go back. Some went, some didn't. But the fact is that those Jews who came back said something to those Jews who were still in Israel, and said to them, you know something, in Babylonia, we had a cool celebration on the 7th month of the year. We celebrated, we changed over the date of the year in the fall. And so they brought back that tradition. And Judaism, as it does many, many times, and I'm sure Rabbi Levin and Rabbi Weissman and Rabbi Mace have all described these things to you over and over again, Judaism is willing to accept things that don't make sense. I mean, then therefore, why don't you simply say, okay, now this is the first month of the year, not the seventh month of the year, and give it up, okay, get rid of that Nisan thing. But the Torah is not, was never edited in the same way that books are edited today. Things are just joined together and mushed together, and sometimes, that smells so good.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, lovely, enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, you smell it?
Yeah, ooh, why not? You guys can't smell it, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, no, it smells delicious. And so the fact is what? Is that, does it make sense? No. So basically in the Torah, we have two operative calendars. We have the first month of the year in the spring, but we have a changing of the calendar date in the fall, which our obviously ancestors brought from Babylonia back to the Holy Land. Now, of course, I'm just going to ask you this. This coming calendar year, the New Year's date is what? 5784. Why? What's happened 5784 years ago? Creation. Okay. Now, you learn a lot from dates, from calendars. Why? Because they teach a tremendous amount about the way that religious tradition or community views the world. After all, we're in the year 2023, obviously. 2023 years ago, what happened? What is our regular calendar based upon? Jesus. Okay, so it's based upon the life and death of one human being. The Muslim calendar is somewhere around 1400 something because it's based upon the life and death of what person? Muhammad. Okay. In Judaism, you would think that 5708, by the way, what's your name? Margaret. Do they don't know each other?
Yes.
Oh, should we do an introduction thing?
If you want, go ahead.
Yes, okay, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Nancy.
Carol. Sheila. And Dora.
Cindy. Fred. Maddie.
Hi, guys and ladies and gentlemen on the line.
You know us.
Now we know you, yes, so to speak. But anyway, is that you would think that 5,783 years ago, we would celebrate Moses. Okay, he was an important guy, right? So you'd think it'd be based upon Moses or some significant person like these other traditions. But this is what is so very unique about Judaism. And when I use words like unique, please understand, I'm not speaking disparaging. I'm not saying Christianity or Islam are not unique, they are. But what makes Judaism so unique, unlike most other religions, is that it bases it upon creation life. By the way, the rabbis always debated things, and they questioned, was it the first day of creation or the sixth day of creation when the first human being, when Adam, was created? But leaving aside that, it gives an indication that not one person, even a person as great as Moses, is any more important than any of us, or you, or all of you. Every one of us is equally important because all of us celebrate life. Okay, so that's the first thing there, that we learned that it doesn't mention the word Rosh HaShanah, the first day of the seventh month. Now, we're going to be over these weeks together, talking about both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, although as I move into hopefully, I go into the fourth week, we'll be focusing most on Yom Kippur at that point in time. Because I'm going hopefully chronologically, Salichot next week, then Rosh Hashanah, then Yom Kippur. The Day of Atonement. The Lord said to Moses, the 10th day of the seventh month, again, the seventh month of the year, which is, oh, by the way, Margaret, don't answer this question. Does anyone know what the seventh month is on the Hebrew calendar? Starts with a T, ends with an I. Tishri, very good. Okay. The 10th month of the seventh month of the Day of Atonement. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. Do not do any work on that day because it is the Day of Atonement, when atonement is made for you before the Lord your God. Those who do not deny themselves on that day must be cut off from the people. That's pretty strong language, right? And that's pretty strong. If you don't come to services on Yom Kippur, forget about it. Okay, goodbye, see ya. I don't know whether they really cut people off in that sense, whatever exactly that means. But basically, you were ostracized. You were made to feel badly. During my rabbinic student years, I was a student chaplain at the Jewish Home and Hospital for the Aged in Upper Manhattan. The average age there was like 85 years old. And between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I'd walk around and meet people and stuff like that. Not everyone attended the Rosh Hashanah service. So I went around asking people, don't forget you're talking about probably close to 250 Jews in this place. And many of them, thank God, were able to move around and come to services. So there was this one guy, he was like almost 100 years old. I'm just going to say, name was Sam. My Hebrew name is Sam Shmuel. So his name was Sam. So I said, Sam, I hope everything's okay. I didn't see you at Rosh Hashanah services. So he stood up and he was tall and he said to me, let me tell you something, Rabbi. I've never been to temple in all my years. I'm not going to start now. So some people are not going to come to Yom Kippur and we're not going to cut them off. We still love them, right? Yes, of course. Okay, so those who do not deny themselves in that day must be cut off from the people. 30. I'll destroy from among their people anyone who does any work on that day. So of course, obviously, what? Yom Kippur, for those of you not familiar, it is called Shabbat, Shabbaton. It is the Sabbath of Sabbaths. So obviously in a traditional setting, if you are not allowed to do any kind of work, manual work, as I'm sure you all know, on Shabbat, guess what? Definitely not on Yom Kippur. Let's see, okay. You shall do no work at all. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come wherever you live. It is a day of Sabbath rest for you, and you must deny yourselves. From the evening of the 9th day of the month until the following evening, you are to observe your Sabbath. Now, notice the word here in the English, and that is, you shall deny yourself. From this develops our custom of what? Fasting, of course. And the purpose of fasting is to reorient ourselves, not to be concerned about the physical, but rather the emotional, the spiritual, the intellectual, the inner person. Okay. I have one of these apps that tells you during the past month your timeline. I don't have any timeline app. And it tells tell myself last month in July, how many times my wife and I ate out, how many times we went shopping. It's really depressing, actually, how much time I spent doing these things. Okay, well, you know something? I can't believe the amount of time I spent eating and going out to dinner, especially because we're about 2.5 weeks back in New York with friends. Okay, we spent a lot of time doing these things. But how many times do I sit and simply look within and trying to figure out how am I doing these things? Am I living an efficient human life? So anyway, many years ago, I had a member of my synagogue in Bnei Israel up by Long Island, which is where I was for 47 years. I'm now a rabbi at Temple Sinai in Delray Beach, on Atlantic Avenue. So anyway, there was this woman, and we had a greeting line, as many synagogues do after the Kol Nidre service is over and other services. So this woman comes up to me and she gives me a note. And the note says, I'm not talking for 24 hours. You see, this woman never really ate very much anyway. Food meant nothing to her, but she was one of these people who never stopped talking. We know people like that, right? Okay, it's like you say hi, and then it's an endless without any punctuation at all. Keeps on going. He said, "Well, I gotta go." Okay, well that was her. But so what did she do? But depriving herself of food on Yom Kippur meant nothing. She fasted from speaking, and that was a major effort for her. In other words, guess what? You need to stop yourself and say, "What am I doing?" Okay, so we learned things here from just this one slide on the Torah. So we'll continue. Now, the Mishnah is a compilation of the discussions and words of the rabbis in Israel on the Holy Land. It was codified in the year 200 of the Common Era, so talking about much later on now. For those of you all familiar with the Mishnah, there were definitely other books, which are called Baraita, etc. There's Midrashim, written by the rabbis as well. But the Mishnah is considered to be the most significant text of all. So, what does the Mishnah say about Rosh Hashanah? Now, the Mishnah, remember, is 200 of the Common Era, so it's much later on, and they will talk about New Year's, or Rosh Hashanah. But notice, there are a lot of them. There are 4 days in the year that served as the New Year, each for a different purpose. Because what is the whole thing about a New Year? It's about what? Beginnings. So based upon what you do. So for instance, any of you were school teachers or school teachers?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Okay, when does your year begin? September.
Yeah.
My wife, who's a school teacher from over 30 years, said the day that she dreaded was the Sunday night before school started. For the second year, she taught the first and second graders, later on adult ed. And she said that was the night she stayed up all night because she was just so worked up about starting, especially with first and second graders, right? And so for school teachers, it's September. Okay, it's like the year ends in June, and for 2 months, whatever, and the year begins in September. I have a cousin who's a tax attorney. When does his year begin? April. Okay, the rest of the year can kind of talk to him. Come about a couple weeks before, like the middle of March. Oh, sorry, don't talk to me, don't call me. We're not going out to dinner for the next month or 6 weeks. Okay, based upon your life, you think about it, we have all different kinds of beginnings. So, on the 1st of Nisan is the new year for kings. It is from this date that the years of a king's rule are counted. So apparently going back 2,000 years ago, kings, there was some kind of a ceremony in the springtime. And the 1st of Nisan is also the new year for the order of the festivals, as it determines which is considered the first festival of the year and which is the last. So based upon that, we have the three major festivals in Judaism are what? Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And you said them in the correct order. Passover is, technically speaking, therefore, the first holiday of the Jewish year. And of course, they're called holidays, right? Chagim. Rosh HaShanah and Yom Kippur are not holidays, they are holy days. Yamim Noraim, days of awe. They come into a totally different category in many ways, in various ways, obviously. And to think about it also, 2 of the 3 of these days, Pesach and Sukkot, last approximately 1 week, right? Who knows why they lasted a whole week? Rather than Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we'll talk about why for 1 day or 2 days, depending upon if you're conservative, Orthodox.
The temple. People had to come to the temple.
And why?
Because they had to give the sacrifices and they had to do all this.
Yeah. According to one thing I read, at Passover time, is that, imagine, by the way, sorry, the women who are in the class, and it's just you and I here, okay? Is that, sorry, my life, is that 250,000 males would bring their offerings to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem during the Passover week. So you needed that many people. Imagine, up to 250,000 people were bringing their offerings to the temple in Jerusalem during Passover and later on the fall in Sukkot. So first of all, you can imagine what went on in Jerusalem, right? First of all, you need places to stay over. You need souvenir shops because they're going to come home with it. And I'm going to bring souvenirs for the kids. You probably had some pubs and some other stuff too. We don't go into that, right? Okay, that's not this class. Because men will be men and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that you can imagine what's going on. So Passover, Pesach, and then the order would be Pesach. 7 weeks later, Shavuot, which is the latter harvest, and then of course Sukkot, which is the fall harvest. And so that's what this is saying. And so the first festival of the year occurs in Nisan, which again is, as Barbara taught us before, and that is Pesach, right? Nisan, right? Okay. Now moving along, on the 1st of Elul is the new year for animal tithes. Tithing was taxation. It means a tenth, and you're required to bring animals or something equivalent, depending upon what you had to be taxed, to where? The Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Why? You got to keep it going. So don't forget your donations for Temple Bethel. Okay, I should put that in my.
That's good.
Yeah, I put that. I'm a rabbi. Okay, so let me continue. All the animals born prior to that date belong to the previous tithe year and are tithe at the single unit, whereas those born after that date belong to the next tithe year. Okay, they're trying to figure out the taxation system. So a tithing means a tenth. And by the way, the Bible does say that one should give a tenth of one's income to the temple in Jerusalem every single year. Hint, hint. And if any of you wins the one in the $500 million lottery tonight, I'm sure that you're gonna give a tenth of that to the temple, or my temple, any temple, okay?
Both.
Yeah, both. I'll abide, right? Okay. Now, finally, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say the new year for animal tithes is on the 1st of Tishri. Okay, now, and notice, on the 1st of Tishri is the new year for what? Counting years, as will be explained in the Gemara. The Gemara means the Talmud. Okay, so what I found fascinating about this paragraph is it teaches again so much. That there obviously the idea of, we think of New Year, obviously January 1st, and then certainly whenever it occurs, because the Jewish calendar moves around a lot, the 1st of Tishri for the Hebrew New Year, right? And then of course there's a Chinese New Year for those of you who go to Chinese restaurants then and celebrate that. Okay. There's all kinds of New Years. But the fact is what? Notice how many different New Years that they spoke about and were a part of what? Jewish society 2,000 years ago. Now, I'm not saying, now notice, they're not talking about parties or anything, they're marking time. Judaism is a time-based religion. Everything is based upon time. I was always very impressed. I was a chaplain in the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center for 30 years, from 1970 to 2000 Manhattan. And I was always impressed when I visited there, across the street at New York Hospital, and local hospitals, my congregation on Long Island, that if you were Orthodox or traditional, you never had to say like other people, Jewish patients would say to me, Rabbi, I've lost all track of time. I've been in this hospital a week. I have no idea what day of the week it is. If you are a traditional Jew, you've got to know what day of the week it is. Because there are certain prayers that are said on Monday, certain prayers said on Thursday, there's certain prayers during the week. You have to know when Shabbat occurs, etc. Yes, Mom?
So is Tishra, the one where when you say counting the years, so that has to do with 7 years of planting and things like that? Is that's?
I think they're talking here about the change of the year date from 5783 to 5784.
Oh.
I think that's what they're thinking about there. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure, but I think it's talking about the thing that we're concerned about. That is, when does the year date change? Yeah.
Okay.
Because remember, this is way past the Babylonian situation by hundreds of years. And so obviously going back now, going to that time, already there was the sense of the 5783 since the time of creation was discussed in a part of Jewish tradition. Okay, okay, so next one. Okay, so now continuing with the Mishnah. Whether the new moon was seen clearly by everyone or whether it was not clearly seen, one may desecrate Shabbat in order to testify before the court. Okay, now it becomes critical here is, how do we know, or how did they know, when Rosh HaShanah begins? How do you know? Remember, there were no funeral homes yet. Okay, there was no Manischewitz calendars yet. Okay, Pesach was met.
Was it the moon?
What? Yeah, the moon. Exactly. It's moon watching. We are a moon watching culture. A moon watchers. You can, again, what the amazing thing is, we don't need a calendar. Go out every single night, see where the moon is, and you know exactly. If it's the 15th of the month, you'll know what holiday you should Pesach. Pesach and Sukkot are always in the 15th of the month. Okay, of their months. Obviously, Rosh Hashanah. We're moon watchers because our ancient calendar was a lunar calendar with what? Solar corrections. The Muslim calendar, by the way, first of all, our regular English calendar, Western calendar, which, by the way, I hope you all realize is a Christian calendar.
Yeah.
Obviously, okay. A Muslim calendar, the Muslim calendar is only a lunar calendar, which is why some of you might be familiar with the Muslim observance of Ramadan. Ramadan can be any time during the whole year. It keeps on moving around and around.
You have a catch.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas our system is lunar with solar corrections. And why? Because you need the solar corrections because you must be able to celebrate Passover in the spring. If you didn't have a solar corrections to this calendar, you'd be celebrating Passover in the fall. Which doesn't, obviously makes no sense at all. Okay, so The rabbis and the genius, way before any computers, could figure all of this out, which is very complicated, to say the least, and I understand none of it, actually. However, I mean, in terms of how they did these things. However, the fact is, as correctly said, we were moon watchers, and therefore, when you go out and it's a new month, if you were to go outside, assuming that it's not cloudy or anything, you look up in the sky, with the beginning of a month, the first day of a month, what would you see? Well, hopefully nothing, right? The first day, yeah, hopefully. Maybe you would see a little, but most probably nothing. Definitely the day before, you see nothing. You see, a new moon is actually no moon. Yes, you all know the moon is there. Okay, we just can't see it. Okay. So anyway, it's a new moon. So what they would do is they would station proper witnesses, and that's what this whole discussion here gets very, very involved in. I only quoted certain parts, but I didn't give every single thing because we'd be here forever trying to figure what they're talking about in the Mishnah, because they get so complicated in their discussions. Because these questions were real. They had to know when a holiday begins. You have to know when a day begins. In Judaism, when does the day begin?
The night
The night before sundown. Sundown, right. In our Western world, when does the day begin? Midnight. Okay. So the fact is that it's critical to know about the movement of the sun and the moon, obviously. So they went, and how many of you have been to Israel? Great, okay, so you all know. So you know, you have the Western Wall, and if you've gone to tour that area, you know that whole thing extends to the southern part where they have those steps going up and whatever. And by the way, on the southern part, we have all those steps going up if you haven't gone up that part, and it's closed up, but there are actually doorways that are now closed in by bricks and stuff. That's where they brought the animals in. On Pesach and Sukkot, they brought the animals up there and they deposited there. Maybe they said, "Oh, thank you, God bless you." Maybe you got a blessing, and then you went about and you went to the pub or wherever. Okay, so the fact is, you fulfilled your obligation. Imagine all those animals. First of all, think about the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Basically, it was a slaughterhouse because you were bringing all of these animals as gifts to the Kohanim, to God, and they had to keep the animals there, number one, and then you had to prepare them for slaughter, then you had to slaughter them, then you had to cook them on Mizbeach, the holy altar. It was a major slaughterhouse, in essence, okay? Not to take away from its holiness, but that's one of the reasons why you had incense also burning all the time.
Oh,
Sure, you had to have incense.
I never thought about it, that when they slaughtered them, they cooked them, so they did eat them.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that you can't waste it.
Well, why? Okay. The prayer services are when? Shachrit morning, Mincha in the afternoon, Mariv evening. Guess what? Morning, afternoon, and evening. What are we doing? Breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Oh,
Yeah. Sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so on the very top corner where the western wall comes out this way, and then you have this wall coming this way, there's a corner up there. And actually, you can see this because now they have an archaeological museum down below in that area there. You can actually see this because it fell down. The corner up there fell down. On the corner, it is actually inscribed in Hebrew, something like this. This is where the shofar sounder stood. Okay, which is really cool, right? Okay, why? Because you have to have, as you'll see in a moment, two witnesses, kosher, acceptable witnesses, okay, who would stand up there as the time goes on. And of course, they kept track of all the time, so they know this is the seventh month is approaching. They have to go up there, and when they see no sliver, no nothing at all, tekiah. Okay. So let's continue reading and see how this works. If a father and his son saw the new moon, they should both go to the court in Jerusalem. It is not that they can join together to give testimony, but close relatives are disqualified from testifying together. That's not really like in the court of law today. A wife can't testify against her husband or whatever, or vice versa. But they both go so that if one of them is disqualified, the second may join together with another witness to testify about the new moon. And again, it goes on and on. About the discussion about who are qualified witnesses, etc. But you can see how important it is. It's not just Mishagas. Okay, sometimes you can read some of the stuff in the Mishnah and tell them, what is it? But the fact is, their life was based upon it. we're so divorced from this. First of all, I'm assuming, looking around, none of us farmers here. Maybe some of you do gardening. We're not farmers. I don't think anyone has any goats or anything in your house. Why do we be farming? Okay, so we're so divorced from life. Unfortunately, we've lost a whole sense of this, of being, this is all life that it's talking about, right? So initially, after the court sanctified the new month, notice what they would then do. They would light torches on the mountaintops from one peak to another. So they sound the shofar, holiday begins, but they would also then, the court then would say, once they heard the shofar, the the court would say, okay, it's Rosh HaShanah, 5784 or some soon. They would light a fire on the mountaintops from one peak to another to signal to the community in Babylonia that the month had been sanctified. In other words, imagine this, that there were people stationed all the way from Jerusalem, all the way to the Jewish community in Babylonia, and they would see these lights all along the way. Okay. After the Samaritans, okay, now, this is really sort of cool, I guess, or really, well, there's always people trying to mess us Jews up, right? Okay. After the Samaritans, Kutim, the Samaritans were a break-off group from the Jewish community, corrupted and ruined this method by lighting torches at the wrong time to confuse the Jews. Okay. The sages instituted that messengers should go out to the diaspora and inform them at the start of the month. Okay. So in other words, things got very complicated because you could see simply lighting torches to announce a month, okay, doesn't really work. Aside from the fact that various things can happen, a torch goes out, it doesn't light, whatever, is that you then had groups like these Kutim, these Samaritans, who would try to mess us up. And they would try to confuse us and throw us off. I mean, these kites, I mean, what is that? Well, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but there is a tradition, and I know sometimes here at Temple Bethel, Rabbi Levin does this, but when you say the Shema, when you come to the last word, Echad, you're supposed to pronounce the Dalet, the last letter, very strongly. Echad, duh, really loud. And why? Because going back 2,000 years ago, what happened is there's another Hebrew word in which the same, it's Echad, remember, is Aleph, Chet, Dalet, but there's another Hebrew word, Aleph, Chet, Resh. And as the saying, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Samaritans or others would rush in and say, Acher. Okay, because they don't know what the word Acher means. Other. Here in Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is another God. And that, of course, is blasphemy, is heresy. And they would try to mess us up. So the tradition became, if you go to some Orthodox synagogues, even conservative, you'll hear the cantor or the rabbi or others really emphasize that Dalet as a tradition. But they're trying to mess us up all the time.
What happens there?
They went away. Eventually they just went away. We're still here to emphasize the Dalet. But I don't know how many of you know that. I mean, the traditions are just amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what happened to the Samaritan?
Yeah, that's not.
There's a community.
Okay, I'm going to read through this, and then, as I mentioned before at the beginning, I do apologize to everyone. I have to have a root canal done at 1:30 today. Unfortunately, it's the only time the whole week that endodontics could put me in. So I'm going to have to stop after this slide and I'll come back. Okay. Thank you for saying that. She said poor thing. It's not that big, is it?
No.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. And from which mountains would they light the torches? They would transmit the message from the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem to Satava, and from Satava to Garofina, and from Garofina to Chabran, and from Chabran to Beit Baltin, and from Baltin, they would not move to light torches in any other predetermined location. Rather, the one who was appointed for this task would wave the torch back and forth and up and down until he would see the entire diaspora before him alight like one large bonfire. So they would light torches to continue transmitting the message from place to place all the way the farthest reach. It's amazing. Okay, the Mishnah begins to discuss the primary mitzvah of Rosh HaShanah, finally, sounding the shofar. All the shofarot are fit for blowing except for the horn of a cow. So you can use any animal except a cow, because it is a horn and not a shofar. Okay, interesting. Rabbi Yossi said, but aren't all shofarot called horn? as it is stated, shall come to pass that when they sound the long blast with the horn of a ram, and the ram's horn is a shofar fit for sounding on Rosh HaShanah. So they get the whole discussion about what's proper. And by the way, I know there are some synagogues where they blow a trumpet. It's not acceptable because you're not allowed to add a mouthpiece to the ram's horn. Or you have to, not supposed to have a mouthpiece. It's supposed to be more of the natural animal's horn itself. So you can see, because today, again, I know what the Jewish calendar is. I got my funeral home calendar back at home, my office, and I look it up. Okay, you know what it is. There's no problem. However, we're going to see from the next, we're not going to look at today because I do have to joyously or unjoyously go to the dentist. But the fact is that this is why, guess what? Outside of Israel, there's the celebration of what? 2 days. Okay. And I'll talk about that next time. So, ladies and gentlemen, wait, there's only one person zooming in?
There might be some others who have left, but we still have our live streamer, so you can just say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
And we'll see you next week, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm sorry again, I have to leave earlier. Next week, I'll stay till 1:15. No, okay. Anyway, God bless you all. Have a lovely week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and shalom. Think about all these things.